Hello.
Hi, baseball fans.
Hey, Twins fans. This is Derek Wetmore and Phil Mackey here. We're sitting in the stands. We're actually front row at Hammond Stadium. I'm going to quick flip this around, and you guys will be able to see the sprinklers that are going on behind us. But in this video, we're going to talk about Jorge Polanco and kind of a surprising thing the Twins said today.
Hold on. Lawnmower guy going by.
Okay, bye, lawnmower guy. But the sprinklers are on. We're getting misted here in sunny Fort Myers in southwest Florida. We just took in a day of Twins spring training, and yeah, after which that sprinkler's going to douse my phone.
We are actually getting kind of getting soaked right now.
Let's just sit it back up there. Whatever. Let's just do it as is. Okay, so Phil, interesting thing that Paul Molitor said today. Our colleague Pat Royce asked him, and my current roommate Pat Royce asked Molitor. He says, I get confused a lot. But in this case, I'm extra confused and can't figure it out. How come Jorge Polanco didn't ever play shortstop in the minor leagues before coming up to take the job on the Twins staff? And Molitor was really blunt when he said, I wish I had a better answer for you. We just messed that one up. And it was kind of, we can talk about more of the comments that he made, but it was kind of just an admission of guilt, really, from the Twins organization as a whole.
Yeah.
Not really giving him any time in 2016 at short in the minors before he came up and took the position in the majors.
That was there were so many things the last few years that fans and media were first guessing and turned out to be right. And anytime you're batting that high of an average as a fan or a media member, like, wait, you have Brian Dozier at second base and you got Plouffe and Sano at third. Shouldn't Jorge Polanco be playing mostly shortstop in the minor leagues just to see?
Just in case.
And,
right?
and it turns out to be an obvious first guess. I feel like most organizations, if not all organizations, should just always have the philosophy of, if you have center fielders, shortstops, and catchers, you should do everything you can to prove to yourself and to them that they're not a catcher, shortstop, or center fielder.
They are until proven otherwise.
Yes, find out if they are a shortstop, and if they prove they're not, then it becomes easy. Now you can try, third base, second base. And the problem here for the Twins in 2017 is Falvey and Levine are having to backtrack. They're finding out now for the first time if Jorge Polanco can play shortstop, if Miguel Sano can play third base. And ideally, these are things that you'd already know going into the season.
Right.
But nobody said it was going to be an overnight process to sort of smooth over everything that went wrong the last 6 years.
Well, and there's a lot of interesting wrinkles that we can take out of this Polanco thing, even before we start talking about other players. But one of them that jumps out to me as we continue to get showered.
Can you guys see on Facebook
Probably
Live the
not.
water that's coming at us right now?
Like, I'm getting wet, but that's fine. It'll just wash off the sunscreen that I have caked on from the past 8 days.
It'll wash off the white sort of powder makeup that you have over your tan bronzed body.
Yeah, no, that's not how this works. But the interesting thing to me is that what happens if, now we're sort of playing revisionist history here, what if the Twins did trade Brian Dozier this winter and Jorge Polanco was a second baseman? I still was advocating that even if they traded him, you still have to wait and see on Jorge Polanco. I still thought he was worth a go at shortstop just to see. Do I think it's 100% that he'd be a quality Major League shortstop? No, of course not. But is it better than 10%? I think that it is. Yeah. I think that the percentage chance that Jorge Polanco sticks in the Major Leagues and is a good shortstop, considering his bat, too, that's part of the equation. I think there's a non-zero chance that would happen, as I love to say, and so the Twins should have exhausted that possibility. But how interesting it would be if they did trade Brian Dozier either last season or this winter, and now we're not talking about, well, he has to be a shortstop. Now it's an interesting conversation of which side of second base is he going to play on?
Yeah. I will follow up to your comments there in a second, since we have Lawnmower Guy going by again. More of a scenic view coming at you. All right, there goes Lawnmower Guy.
Well, that's pretty creepy.
It would be creepy if he was, naked on the lawnmower.
Just the action shot. I feel like he wasn't expecting to be followed by a camera, and you just did it anyways.
And we weren't planning on doing a full Q&A on this, but there are a couple good questions coming in that we could at least kick around on this brief Facebook Live session.
Yeah, what's up?
I saw somebody asked a few minutes ago what was the main takeaway we had from Derek Falvey on 1500 ESPN. Derek was on our radio show with Judd and I this morning at 9 o'clock, and it was 15 or 20 minutes of really insightful baseball, non-baseball, cultural discussion. My two main takeaways were, number one, he has a method for why he didn't do more. Him and obviously Thad Levine. I don't know if my phone is ready to get soaked.
Yeah, you're probably getting drenched as well.
I don't know. I think a lot of people figure they went out, they took some shots this offseason, and the poll ads, the cheap poll ads, held them back. A, that's not true. B, they weren't planning on going guns blazing and winning the offseason winter war in free agency because, well, two reasons. Number one, you're just not going to outspend some of the bigger market teams. And number two, he pointed out, and didn't name the teams, but you could go through them, Marlins, Blue Jays, Angels, the teams that win the offseason,
win the winter.
Free agency, winter meetings, generally have to blow it all up in like 2 years anyways, because you just don't have, if you're trying to fix your franchise through free agency, there's not enough stars in free agency that you can sign as a team to make up for your rotting core.
Sure.
So, back to the second takeaway, they're fixing the rotting core with things that you don't necessarily see on the surface. They are calling for a more horizontal management structure than previously. And that means Falvey and Levine sort of sit on top of the baseball ops department, and then they want everything else to be as flat and horizontal as possible. So think about a lot of the offices that you guys might work in, or that we even work in media companies, and a lot of those structures are vertical. You have some sort of a CEO or a GM, and then you have middle managers stacked on top of each other, SVPs stacked on top of each other. They want voices to be heard. They want people to share ideas. I've heard stories from people in the organization already, just being here for 18 hours, who have ideas that they were afraid to share in the past, or things they wanted to implement that it just wasn't my place to say or do anything, and now they're being challenged. I don't care if you're a hitting guy and we're talking about a pitcher. I don't care if you're a PR guy and we're talking about a baseball ops hire. We want to flush out smart thoughts and opinions from people that we hired for a reason. And so, what does that mean from a baseball standpoint? We aren't going to see yet. We're obviously, but they're hoping that this new management style and culture and collaborative nature of how they go about sort of brainstorming and coming up with ideas, they hope that manifests itself through extra wins and maybe better players on the field.
I'll say two quick things, but then I've got a question for you on the Falvey interview because I didn't get a chance to ask you. It's easy to make fun of that, what you just talked about. Really easy to make that a punchline, but I don't think that we should. I think that they should be given time. But secondly, I think I'd like to say in the same breath that you shouldn't give them too much time, right? Like, my natural tendency is going to say, okay, wait and see. It's a slow-going approach. But, like, if they haven't made any moves and the Twins aren't inching towards contention in 3 years, I think those chairs should be a little bit itchy. I'm not saying give them a decade to rebuild this thing, but it takes more than an off season. To go from 103 losses to expect a 95-win team to emerge next summer, I think it'd be unrealistic. So those are the two things on the timeline. But then my question for you on Falvey, I've talked to him a handful of times throughout the winter and since he was hired, took over in November. Was that as zen as you've heard him? He just seemed like very calm and just like totally cool customer this morning. And did you put that interview on the Touch Mall feed?
Did not.
It's up on the website. So
you
the
can find it on 1500ESPN.com.
The interview's posted on the website, and my impression from lurking in the background, taking grainy, shadowy pictures was he just seemed like totally chill, totally smooth.
Well, Derek,
he's in his element.
Great interviewers tend to draw out the best in people's personalities.
And sometimes you do, too.
That's right. I see what you did there.
Yes.
Yeah. So I guess how I would characterize Derek Falvey is he's going to play information close to the vest. People wonder, well, why didn't you guys ask about Brian Dozier this morning? Because it's a waste of 30 seconds. You get a guy for 10 or 15 minutes or whatever it was, 15, 20 minutes, he's going to shut down any Brian Dozier conversation. But he would happily talk about the fact that he sat down, for instance, with all 62 players in camp, face-to-face individually, for 10 minutes or more, and depending on the player, it might have been way longer than 10 minutes. He's happy to talk about the fact that they have these pitching and hitting, he hates the word summits, but call them hitting summits or pitching summits, where they are trying to get as much information out of every square inch of the organization as possible to make sure, he's brought up a couple examples of, if they're out looking for the next high school arm in the Twin Cities or wherever that high school arm may be coming from, he wants to show video of that pitcher to the hitting gurus in the organization too, so that they might be able to pick up something from a hitter's perspective. Oh, hey, the cork in that pitcher's delivery might work against high school hitters, not against major league hitters. He's also talked about the fact that if they aren't asking for people to contribute ideas on a regular basis, then maybe there's a pitcher in the minor leagues who doesn't break out because it was the strength and conditioning guy that would have offered the final piece to the puzzle, but he was told to stay in his lane, right? Maybe there's a pitcher, there might be one pitcher who breaks out because he just learned a different pitch. There might be another pitcher who breaks out because he needed more core strength fitness. And one more thing that stood out to me while we're kind of talking about Derek Falvey, we had Ryan Presley on our show today.
Okay.
Twins reliever Ryan Presley. And I asked him, what's one thing that maybe you guys are implementing from a process perspective that is new this year with the new regime compared to last year? And he said, all of the pitchers are not only forced to locate their fastball early in camp, and I don't know how they quantify that necessarily until they start. Hold that thought. They have to hit with a four-seam fastball a certain amount of low and outside spots before they can start even incorporating other pitches. They want to be a four-seam fastball organization with velocity, with location, and if you can master that low and outside edge, which is a very damage minimizing pitch, then you can build off that command and that spotting with your changeup, your off-speed stuff.
Sure, I think it's not really reinventing the wheel, but an interesting little wrinkle that Neil Allen's added this year. And before we get to that, I do see Kevin's comment here. He says, "Please get Derek back indoors. He looks frightened."
Yeah,
and
only a couple more minutes here.
Yes,
okay.
Can
you hang on?
Yeah, the SPF 30 is designed to go another. I think we've got another 30 minutes or so before I have to reapply.
45 in the shade,
That's
though.
Right.
So, yeah.
No, the shade's dangerous too. My worst sunburn came in the shade actually when I was
too bad.
younger. Yeah, that's another story for another video. The interesting thing about the Neil Allen thing, they're not reinventing the wheel, and I wrote about this on the website 1500ESPN.com, but the essence of the game, you start your bullpen session, and from the very first pitch, you're starting with glove side fastballs, and you've got to hit your spot, hit that catcher's glove 3 out of 5 times. If you don't, you're continuing to throw glove side fastballs. Once you hit 3 out of 5, you can move to arm side fastballs, and then if you hit the catcher's glove there 3 out of 5 times, well, go ahead and move on to your breaking stuff, your changeup. But I bet you there are some pitches. I haven't seen a bullpen session where this happened, but if you only get 20, 25 pitches, and you've got really bad command, couldn't you see it that a pitcher hangs out and has to work on his fastball the whole bullpen session?
In fact, Ryan Presley was joking, but being serious when he said, when I caught wind of this before I got here, I figured I would only be throwing four-seam fastballs in camp.
Oh, come on.
And he pumped the first 4 right on the spots he was supposed to.
He's being modest. Yeah. Ryan Presley can do this, but here's where it gets interesting. It's going to be not just the major leaguers, because I think a lot of those guys can do it. Once you're Phil Hughes, you can throw a fastball where you want to. You've been doing it for long enough. Irvin Santana, it's not going to keep Irvin Santana from getting to his slider. He's going to throw sliders in the bullpen session. But what about a guy like Jose Barrios? What about a guy like Felix Jorge?
If Jose Barrios could spot a fastball on 3-0, 3-1, he would have had an ERA under 5 certainly last year. What was it, over 6 for the season?
8.02.
It would have been cut in half if he could locate a fastball last year.
And that's what's going to be interesting to me. Once they implement this in the minor leagues, and it's sort of like, okay, are you the kind of guy that can succeed because you're just better than minor league hitters? Okay, well, prove to us that before we move you to from AA to AAA, that when we need you to hit that 4 spot with your fastball, you can do it.
Yeah.
Rather than just being like, okay, well, I was blessed with 97 and these punks can't hit it, just like me and you. And that's why we flamed out when we got to a certain level.
situation. Yeah.
we flamed out when we got there because we weren't exactly sure what we were doing.
One time I went to the state fair and did the velocity thing.
Yeah.
And I tore my labrum trying to throw 67 miles an hour.
It's no good. So. It's really not good. But if you could spot the fastball, you might still be hanging around in the game. That's what's going to be interesting to me. Is not so much for the major league guys with Neil Allen's little bullpen game, but the younger guys, the 19, 20, 21-year-olds, learn early and get this subconscious ingrained habit that if you don't throw your fastball, not only for strikes, but where you want to for strikes on a certain third of the plate, the rest of your game's not really going to develop the way you want it to.
Eric asks, does Patrick Royce have his shirt on today? Just saw him upstairs.
I think so, yes.
Yes. He's developing the sort of old man leather tan skin now because he's just been down in Florida for so long. Mm-hmm. Paul asks, Derek Wetmore needs a better hat.
That's more of a statement than a question.
This is the Brad Childress hat. Remember Brad Childress wore the bucket hat.
I think it's quite as floppy as Brad Childress. Maybe like a schoolboy Q look, I think. Combination of Brad Childress and schoolboy Q.
Can you grow the Brad Childress creepy mustache? We better not blow all of our great material. We should stop the Facebook Live session now.
Pre-Brad Childers impressions.
Shameless plugging. You can find him on Facebook on his own page, too, at Derek Wetmore. Is it at? Just Derek Wetmore, MLB.
Search, I did this the other day because I was always sending people there, and I didn't know if they were finding it. But it's Derek Wetmore, MLB on Facebook, and that takes you to my page.
I'm Phil Mackey Radio on Facebook, and we will pump out at least one Touch 'em All podcast episode this week, probably more. And you can find all kinds of great content on the Mackey and Judd iTunes on-demand page, or find our radio show live.
Yeah.
Find the Touch 'em All podcast and 1500ESPN.com.
Let's go get some shade back up there, maybe.
Yeah. So, you can still get sunburned in the shade, obviously.